Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Blacklist. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, you had that interaction between Liz and Townsend, him proving a point, because it's like, hey, here's all the people that failed me. Oh, Liz, you failed me too, so you get a bag over your head. It's like, why is it the fact is that you were right there with Reddington, you knew exactly where he was, but you managed to get away. But for her, it's like, I got information on Reddington, I know how to kind of prove that he's in 13. He's like, hey, all right, go ahead and prove it, live your sweet dream and do all that, but it's kind of making it clear, like, oh, don't fail me again, because it's going to get ugly. Once again, just showcasing the person she got in bed with. It's like, the devil you know, Reddington versus the devil you don't, and you chose the devil you don't really know under these circumstances, And I think that will continue to be a huge miscalculations on Liz's part. We'll see in the end whether or not it is the calculated risk is worth it. To a certain extent, with the way everything shapes out in this episode, we'll get to it soon enough, but I'd say, like, in her mind, it all worked out because she has the backing and resources to do what was necessary, but regardless. So, basically, Liz has got her going about her means to try and... I'm curious also, like, it doesn't seem like she's really dealing with the aftermath of what happened to Anne. Maybe she doesn't know, maybe she never followed up, or maybe it's kind of showcasing how, I just commented about it, that the fact is that Liz hasn't gone full Reddington. The fact is, last episode kind of proves that, yes, she still has too much of a conscience to fully go full-blown dark side. She can't fully pull the trigger like Reddington would. We've seen that, time and time again, like, oh, you betray him, you proved, you pull Kate, he is not afraid to put a bullet in your head. Granted, that ended up kind of backfiring because he didn't put her down like he thought he did. So it's just one of those situations showing, despite connections and stuff like that, Reddington's not willing to pull the trigger, except for when it comes to Liz. Liz will forever be his blind spot, his weakness, But Liz hasn't gone full-blown Reddington. She's tiptoed those lines and does some Reddington-level stuff, but she can never fully pull the trigger because last episode showcased that she wasn't 100% willing to go all the way, even though she had her subconscious, which manifested as Kate telling her, go all the way, go as far as I couldn't, don't miss your shot when you have the chance, and she kind of did, and Anne ended up, and we kind of now find out in this episode, oh, Anne did in fact die. When you looked at the end of the last episode, it's like, oh, that's a lot of blood. That's a lot of blood. So, Reddington's still kind of dealing with that. We see him kind of dealing with the aftermath, but not Liz. But once again, maybe for her, it's like she doesn't know that Anne died, maybe she thought, like, she gets help. But once again, maybe it's a thing of, I don't care, I'm this close to figuring out Reddington. She'd rather prove that he's in 13 rather than kill him. Like, I think that also proves a lot, too. But, because I think by proving he's in 13, she clears her mom's name and exposes him. So it's like, maybe she thinks that when it's all said and done, I won't be able to get every aspect of my life back, but I'll get enough of it by proving Reddington to be the Russian spy that he actually is. So, that's the thing. Truth be told is, it doesn't seem like she is as keen on killing Reddington like she was. It's more about proving he's in 13. Now, she had the opportunity, but she couldn't pull the trigger just because I guess she's afraid if she did pull that trigger, she would be no different to him. Granted, she's done some shady stuff, but, like, there's always been a bit of dissonance. Like, once again, like, her Cyranoid ended up killing Townsend's sister, Mary, so she didn't ever have to do it directly. So, like I said, there's like a buffer zone in it. So, like, pulling the trigger on Reddington would have been her doing it herself. So, once again, it's just a complicated thing. But like I said, Reddington's thinking about Anne and their time together and her dying because of him, getting involved with him. So, basically, they end up meeting up with Belsky, who gives them some information about, like, an encrypted message in Russian. So Reddington brings this to the task force, which honestly, considering the last run-in, that being with Rakitin, I'm surprised the task force is keen on doing that. But I guess it's like, well, if this leads us to Townsend and Elizabeth, they're on more so Elizabeth's side than Reddington's, but it's like, we'll use Reddington as a mean of getting closer to Liz. So I guess that could be like the justification, like, oh, we'll go along with it for now. But it's like, yeah, he references, like, the Russian, not this being this old school means of decrypting stuff, because apparently, like, the Soviets were, like, some of the top class at, like, encrypted messages and stuff like that, and that basically the Russian knot is the only means of decrypting it, because it's like, it's a complicated layer of like, right, like without certain aspects to everything, there are trillions upon trillions of codes, as Aram says, so that's their means of kind of getting around it. So it's like, you need this cipher if you want to be able to kind of decipher this message. So, and so it's like Reddington ended up handing over a painting to a museum in Minsk where the one other Russian knot is, and like Cooper's like, wait, you want us to steal it? And he was like, yes, what the hell do you think we've been talking about the entire time? So it's kind of a thing of even Park being like, are we really doing this? But like Aram's like, honestly, we've kind of done worse. So stealing from a museum's like kind of mild in comparison to a lot of other shady shit we've kind of done over the years. So nevertheless, basically they're using Reddington's painting that he kind of gave to them as a means to come in there. Yes, they can't legally get like all that, but at the very least, them showing up as the FBI looking for Reddington because of the painting and stuff like that gives them the distraction needed to steal it, while at the same time Liz is doing her own thing. And the entire time I love it being like, okay, she's working with Rudiger, and you're like, okay, so where the hell is that going? What's that all about? So it's like, okay, I guess they're on their own operation. I was wondering, I was like, are they going to collide? I was like, nah, they're not. But then it was like, oh no, they literally are colliding because they're both going after the Russian knot. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense because the whole point of this is like, oh, okay, so there's Reddington's lie again. Once again, it's a complicated thing of Reddington somewhat up, like, it's one of my things of like, I've always said, I don't think Reddington ever lies. I just don't think he always tells the truth. And this episode kind of goes against that because it's like, oh no, he straight up lies. He lied this episode, you know? So it's like, to be fair, the argument could be it's not his lie, it's someone else. But it's like, I still kind of believe a lot of times, like, Reddington's told a lot of half-truths. He's never lied. I always feel like he's told half-truths. That's always been my thought process. But like I said, this episode just seems like he straight up lied. Because each one's got their own complicated... Well, I think the FBI kind of had the easier means of stealing the Russian knot rather than Elizabeth's team. Which I also love that while she's in the middle of the operation, like, Townsend calls her up and she's like, what the hell? He's like, no, wait. I got to tell you about this dream where I had the funeral. It's like, I guess who was in the casket? It was Reddington, and he looked, ugly and yellow, and it's just like, he was just disgusting. And it's like, he's like, but the fact of the matter is, this dream, it's a good sign, Liz. I made all those threats against you. He's like, I'm sorry. Fact of the matter is, I believe in this mission. I think everything's going to work out. And it's so weird that, like, he called her up about that. And even telling Rudiger, it's like, yeah, he's talking about he had a dream about me. And it's like, Rudiger being like, he is creepy. It's like, dude, it's like randomly called. But then also that kind of shows like, because he didn't know you were literally in the middle of an operation because you didn't want him to know what you were up to. Because I guess it's like, you didn't want him kind of interfering with your business. It's like, also, it's probably much sweeter to do what you're doing and then, like, throw it in his face like you do at the end of the episode. But I also love, like I said, it seems like the FBI had an easier time because they can use the FBI. They have the FBI badge as a means of kind of getting around. So I love the whole thing of like, oh yeah, those guys are talking. It's like, oh yeah, this is he made some reference to like Aram being like a cowboy, big gun and everything. And Aram's like, yeah, I'm not here to like cowboy and anything. It's like, yeah, mother effers, he knows. We know our boy Aram speaks like half a dozen languages. So. And it ultimately ended up, it's like, right. And he also says, like, oh, yeah, like, I have a small bladder. Like, the team calls me Peanut. And even later on, they're laughing about it, even being like, hey, where is Peanut? I love that they just, like, not where the FBI agent is. Like, but where's Peanut? I like that kind of stuck, But I also love, like, okay, everyone's about to steal the Russian knot, and then it's just a thing of like, right, Rudiger blows the bottom and it falls through to the ground, and then Park and Wrestler are looking down and there's Rudiger and Liz, and they look up at him and like, run, and they take off. Park and Liz duke it out. To be fair, that could have got nasty because as we know, Park has anger issues and she can lose herself in the moment. Like, she didn't hold no punches against Liz. She was going hard trying to like I think kind of knock her out. But luckily, Rudiger shows up and he's like, oh, I always wanted to have my hero moment or whatever. So, Wrestler's there bringing up the Townsend thing. And she's like, what? Townsend? Why would he? He doesn't know I'm here. How did you guys... Wait, what? And it's like, in that moment, you're like, more of a... At that moment, it's like, okay, so it's all Reddington's game. So... And obviously that didn't sit well because it's like, for Liz, it's like, it doesn't make any sense on how that happened. Like, why were the tasks, like, what were they talking about? And so obviously they now have it, and Liz is calling them up about kind of revealing what she really wants. And now it becomes a situation of like, well, who's lying? Is Liz lying? Is Reddington lying about who's really after the Russian knot for the real reason? So Russell's like, hey, let's meet up. I'll bring the Russian knot. We can translate some stuff. You can, prove that he is, the Russian asset in 13. Cooper, not 100% trusting Wrestler's decision making in this. It makes sense in the grand scheme of things, considering like, hey, like you've gotten too damn close to Liz on too many occasions, and you've kind of let her slide on many different occasions. But it is also interesting. The fact is that despite Cooper being like, oh, we're choosing Liz's side, I guess that's why he's kind of like, I'm choosing your side, but also like we're going to bring you in. And just to kind of like close this once and for all, I guess it's sad because it's like you decided you're going to choose Liz's side at the end of the day, but I guess it's like she's kind of crossed so many lines that even though Reddington has as well, that I'm like, why? It seemed like I'm still Team Reddington. I always have been, which doesn't mean I'm anti-Team Liz. I just feel like Liz is misguided in what she's doing. That's just always been my perspective on it, but it's just interesting that, like, Cooper was like, we're going to secretly do this without Wrestler knowing. So, Cooper kind of screwed the pooch because they were able to kind of translate some stuff because it turns out Liz got all this information because she found her mom's, like, files and stuff like that, getting stuff translated. It's like she got, like, half of the stuff because, like, her mom figured out half of everything but not all of it. So they put in the code and everything. But it turns out it ended up just being a string of numbers. It's like, wait, what's going on here? Then the FBI moves in. Liz disappears because she basically set up a flash mob situation of other women wearing red jackets, so she was able to disappear. So, yeah. Liz came prepared just in case, contingencies and all that, in case things kind of went sideways, and she was right to. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, once again, it's like maybe we missed a step or something like that. I don't know. And it's like, right. It turns out they went to Belsky first. And that's why because Reddington came to him afterwards. And for him, it's like, oh, this is something so important. My life was going to be in danger. So for him, it's like, I wasn't going to betray Mr. Reddington. Me and Mr. Reddington have a deal. Like, the moment something serious like this came up, you guys came to me first. And it made me realize, oh, I need to go to Mr. Reddington. I didn't have to tell him you were involved. He knew, just like, all he had to do was describe Liz. And it was like, oh, female, 30s, brunette, blue eyes. And it's like, yeah, he knew it. He knew that Liz, immediately when the whole thing came up about like, oh, like deciphering all that, he immediately knew it was Liz looking into his business. It turns out the only person with the decipher, like you need a specific key to decipher the message, and Reddington's the only one with it. So he's deciphering everything for Cooper and everything. It's like, oh, I basically, screwed over like a deal with the whole painting and everything. So it's like, why would I, go through that much effort just to kind of screw with you, Cooper? Well, turns out the message says, hey, Liz was trying to set up a hit, which Wrestler's the only one that wants to give her the benefit of the doubt, and Cooper doesn't want to believe her and everything. And it's like, well, he was like, nope, Liz is the one that's lying. And for Wrestler, it's like, what are you going to do? He's like, you're going to, all you're going to do, keep following me just because you don't believe me. So Wrestler's going to definitely be away from the FBI. Like, he's going to be kind of in between right now, still doing his job as the FBI, but also because he believes Liz, he knows that there's more going on here. So I thought that was fascinating. And then obviously it's like, right, their friend from the East gets the message of like, right, things have kind of like any interference stuff kind of pointing your direction. That's kind of been taken care of because now they've made Liz look like the liar with the fake message and everything. But now with the actual cipher, Liz was able to decipher the message she got, the numbers initially. But then it's like she was using the American alphabet and ended up kind of using, ended up being like, I think the Russian alphabet is what was supposed to be used instead. And it turns out the message is actually like, okay, it's time. Basically mobilize all assets, and it's like, wait, what's that about? So I guess that's kind of implying like maybe like all the Russian assets that are in the US right now. That's kind of what that's implying. But for Liz, it's like, yep, this is proof that he's N13. Now, what wrestler's going to do with this is going to be interesting. Like, maybe for him, it's like, you guys aren't going to believe Liz, so I'm going to just work with Liz on my own. We're just going to be like a secret duo. I can't let you guys get involved because you guys believe Reddington's lies. Or maybe he'll bring this proof. I don't know. But either way, Liz showing up at Townsend's place, bag over his head, like, yo, you, like, here's proof that Reddington's N13. My mom is innocent, but also don't get it twisted. We're in this hunt together. I do not work for you. It's like, yo, it's like, it's interesting you would do that to that dude. That's a scary dude that you don't do that to. So I guess for him, it's like, well, to be fair, I kind of acted a little rash. You acted a little rash. But the fact of the matter is, we're good. Let's call it even. I'm like, he seems someone that's petty enough to kind of hold that. Again, it's just like he lets his rage kind of get the best of him. Kind of like Parks to a certain extent. Just a little more psychotic. I won't call her Park psychotic. It's just there's a lot of trauma there that kind of leads to explosive anger she can't control. He just has a lot of trauma in his own right that just makes him full-blown psychotic. It's like, yep. So we'll see how his response will be to that from the future. It's like, yeah, we're still going to be working together, but once again, what's Liz's end goal when she does reveal Reddington? Like, does she plan on killing Townsend? Because it's like, right, all the terrible stuff you've done, I'm waiting for, like, I'm going to use the enemy of my enemy is my friend until I take down my enemy, and then you're my enemy again, and I can put a bullet in you, take you down as well, because, well, I guess she's got all the proof working alongside him with all the shady stuff that he's done, so she can take him down if necessary. So once again, it's all pointed toward Reddington, but I think when it's all said and done, she'll probably take Townsend down too. It's like, and no way, probably even if it's like, oh, if I get tangled up with all the illegal stuff that we've done together, it's like, fine, as long as I take you down too while I'm end up exposing Reddington, we don't know what her end game is. Hell, we don't know what Reddington's end game is, so. Which, speaking of Reddington, we had some interesting developments with Paula this episode, which were great. It's like, he's like, oh, you're calling us Bill and Steven again, even though you said Dembe and Reddington when you were talking to Dembe. So it's like, you know who I really am. It's like, yeah, but how? It's like, okay, so I was in Glenn's room. Apparently he's been writing I say manuscript, but it's more like a memoir of basically all your shenanigans. And it's like, he's like, and Reddington's like, I can't believe it. Dembe's like, honestly, I can't. I'm like, me too. It's Glenn writing a story about his adventures with Reddington. That's so Glenn. That is the most Glenn thing ever. And it's like, it kind of fills your heart up a little bit. You're like, Glenn, you're still here. You're still here in our hearts, both to the actor and to the character of Glenn, so that it's still there. It's just kind of, it made me feel good to be like, more Glenn. And the moment we got his mom involved, I was like, is his mom gonna take over work? And in the long run of it, it ends up being the case. I love that. Like, at first she's like, yeah, I'm falling a little behind because I don't have his income, but it's like how much you need? $172. It's like, I'll pay you back and everything. It's like, oh, but no. How about you kind of, it's like, it's a gift. Think of it as me buying Glenn's manuscript. It's like, the last thing I need is this out and about, because Paul was like, nah, you can trust my discretion. So that's interesting, because to be fair, like, it fits Glenn so much, because all the like little crazy terrible jokes that Glenn would play where he'd make Renton feel terrible, and he's like, just messing with you, I'm good, we're good, it almost feels like it's almost a little Watchmen-esque of like, like the line of like, today a comedian died, like, it kind of reminds me of like the Rorschach thing, just to an extent. It kind of makes me think of that a little bit. But God, I went on a tangent. Right. But it's like, oh yeah, I need you to look up something for me. And she was able to like, yeah, like, this dude is kind of sweet on me. So it's like, oh, you were able to get this information from him? It's like, yeah, we went on dinner and everything. I always told Jelly Bean, you get more bees with honey. And it's like, oh, but here's this receipt. Could you reimburse me? Because he wanted to go Dutch. And she's like, and even Reddington be like, oh, insert dude's name for like wanting to go, for the expensive lunch and everything. But it turns out the person he's looking for is Emma Foster, Anne's daughter. And it's like, right, because he referenced her at the beginning, like, and has a daughter. And so this is him trying to compensate for it. And it's like, yeah, I was like I set up the wheels and stuff like that for your mom. It's like, Mom never said anything. It's like, well, it's kind of an awkward conversation. And it's like, well, I'm here. It's like, what happened to my mom? It's like, you don't know. It's like, I guess the news hadn't reached her yet. So it's like, your mom passed away. And so it turns out Emma, well, for one, she's like, this doesn't make any sense. We talked about this like last year, and it's like, it was supposed to be 3,000, and now it's like 3 million. It's actually interesting because like Reddington kind of did the same thing for Liz too, because Liz found out like, wait, apparently like you're the one that set up a lot of stuff for me growing up, like funds, so that I'd be taken care of. It's like that you were behind that. So it's kind of almost in a similar vein, which is even sadder knowing that it's like, right, he did that for Liz, and Liz inadvertently and accidentally killed Anne, and now he's kind of doing that to her for her daughter. But for her, she knows about Anne because Anne had called her like last week about like, right, I got mixed up with this criminal. I guess it might have been in between that time before like Reddington circled back, like, you know, before, you know, Liz showed up. Maybe it's like, because that's what I'm confusing is like, when would she have really had the time to, because she just found out about Reddington, like, but maybe at some point, like, there was a lot going on. When would she have had the time except for like, well, I guess like right before she was, you know, because it's like Liz was like, oh, I'll stay with my friend, you know, at her cabin and everything. And last episode we found out like, oh, Liz was that sad friend that she had met with and everything. So it's like, I guess before, you know, everything, she was calling her. I guess she had talked to her daughter, and that, like, sadly, like, that message had to be right before she died. Like, that's the only time frame she would have had the free time to really say that, considering everything going on at that time. So it is a thing of like, it's like, right, you know, for her, it's like, I will only take this money. Like, can you promise me that will have nothing to do with this criminal that came into my mom's life? Because I don't want her to, like, you know, it's like, you know, I love my mom. I want to remember her for the good, kind person she was, not the criminal she got mixed up in. And it's like, you know, and Reddington's like, honestly, I can't promise you won't have to, you know, the money will come from that guy. But at the end of the day, your mom would want to know that you were taken care of first and foremost. Like, you know, so the fact is, for her, you can decide what to do with the money, whether you want to donate all of it, whether you want to just kind of like, you know, at the very least, pay off all your bills first and then do whatever you want to with the rest of the money. Like, you know, just think about it for a couple of days. And for her, it's like, you know, how did my mom die? It's like an accident. It's like, was it because of this criminal? And it's like, no. He's like, but he was responsible. And it's like, do you believe like a man like him will get what he deserves at the end of the day? And Reddington's like, I do, you know. And it's like, it's sad because he's saying that from a place of guilt of like, right, it is because I got involved with her. I should have never done that. Like, Denbei warned me. I just enjoyed, I found love, you know. I was able to kind of escape everything. But it's like, you can't build what you've built for the past 3 decades and then want, like, it's like all of a sudden be like, oh, I want a normal life. No, you can't just have that normal life. Your life, your world is eventually going to catch up, and ended up being an innocent person, ended up getting caught up in it. Like, I don't think he blames Liz necessarily, because he recognizes like, the only reason this all happened is because of me. It comes back to me first and foremost. It's not on Liz, it's on me. So, and I think in general he's like, oh, I'm not going to be like, the criminal rarely gets away with everything. So I guess this might even be foreshadowing like, oh, when it's all said and done, Reddington's not going to survive all of this, whether it's whatever his end game is, whether it's his war with Liz. Like, there's no like happily ever after for someone like Reddington that, you know, ends like other people's story. Like, we know a certain other anti-hero who goes full-blown villain over the course of their 5-season show, leave it at that, who kind of gets theirs at the end. It's like, you know, so it's kind of a similar thing. Like, I kind of expect Reddington's story to end that way. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it's just kind of a sad thing, you know. It's like, he did love Anne, but it's the thing of like, your love for her is what caused this in the first place. So but then we do have at the end, it's like, hey, thanks for all you've done, Paula. It's like, oh, did you enjoy the ride? She's like, yeah, I like leaning against the window and, you know, feeling the bump on every ride. So it's like, how would you like employment? So it's like, basically Reddington's hiring her to basically do what he had Glenn doing. So it's like, to me, it's like Glenn lives on through his mom and the shenanigans, and like, because you can definitely see like his mom's got it. Once again, it's so interesting because I've talked about it recently. Like, that actress, like the most recent thing I'd seen her in was season 3 of Ozark. So like, you know, it's like, I was kind of worried a little bit, but it's like, no, Paula's nothing like her character from Ozark. No, she's good. So it's gonna be interesting to see her working with Reddington. And like I said, it's just like, it's like Glenn kind of lives on to an extent, so it fills you with like a little bit of, because like I said, like you could definitely tell Paula's Glenn's mom, like their personality and everything, and just who she is, a lot of interesting developments. I'm very interested to see ultimately where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.